Good evening, everyone. Once again, happy Monday to you. Um, if that's possible, it's Monday. We're back here again at 5 p.m. on September 16th, 2019. And just want to say good evening to everybody and welcome once again. All right. Thank you, Paul. Looks like you can see my screen good and sounds like you can hear me well. I'm happy to hear that for this Monday. So, for again, those of you that are brand new on the call, we're going to be looking at answering your questions, getting your questions answered. And those of you that need to just get a quick review, please type in your questions here in your control box as usual, and simply hit send, and the questions will come to me. Hopefully, we'll get a chance to answer them on this particular call. We do have a lot of questions from the last two calls, so we're going to see if we can rip through those. And the you see questions are already starting to come in, so I appreciate that. Appreciate having all of the new folks on with us here this evening. So, in getting your questions answered, we're going to go right into the Investment Dominator. Want to point out to those. Let's see. I'm going to bring my screen over here and make it big so that we can look at the Investment Dominator. Just for those that are going to be on the 2-day workshop that's coming up here a week from Thursday. I tell you, that time has really gone by. We're going to be looking forward to getting a chance to meet you in person. Those of you that are on this call, remember the big three that we want to have completed by the 26th. Those of you that will be on that 2-day event. Hopefully by now everyone's able to log into Investment Dominator successfully. We'd appreciate if you could have your signature in the system and company info filled out in the system, because we will be generating documents out of Investment Dominator where both of those items are going to be needed. And finally, your custom domains, which is your buying and selling site. And so we did have right off the bat kind of an easy question that we can look at here even before we get into some of the previous questions, is how to stop this ID tour from showing up. As you can see, when you log in, if it's still enabled, your ID tour will show up. So supposedly right here, you can just go in the tour even without progressing through. And you see it says enable tour. As long as you have this saying yes, every time you log in newly, I think, or really every other time you log in, you're going to see your ID tour. All you just do is simply hit no, and that will disable it. You can hit no and then go on to some other screen, and that will disable that. It'll turn it off. So it's right here on the front. Just don't migrate to any other page. Just in the tour as you log in and hit no, and that will. I keep mine enabled because I'm on the. Yeah, it's pretty simple, Eileen. But yeah, sometimes just the way things process. I keep mine enabled, obviously, because I do a lot of the onboarding calls with some brand new students, and I just want to be able to show them the tour that's going to come up for them. So in any case, glad you all are here. And moving on with our questions, we had a question from actually last Thursday. Dean had posted this question. He said he imported a list of about um, we imported a list about 100 records did not import into the Investment Dominator. Is there any way to go back and find out what was the problem? And good question, Dean. And you can do that once you import records, obviously, into Investment Dominator. Okay, once we hit import and we have records coming in, there is, of course, a page that comes up and gives you your results. If there's any records that did not uh, process or that there are errors on, it should tell you that number of records that did not import, and also give you a list of the ones that you could actually go out and correct. But the situation, it sounds like once you go past the results screen where it lists your errors, is there no log or anything? Is there any way to see what actually happened once you get off of the result screen? And unfortunately, the answer is no. So you can't go back to see your errors after you've already gone past them. What you can do, I think I showed you the other day, a couple of weeks ago or so, you can go under My Team. You could look in your activity log, and if you want to look at the last import, see this one here, updated by importing list, that would show you your number of records, the number of the records that you imported. Now, if you want to get to where those errors are and see exactly why they were errored, you can again go in here, hover over the question mark, and you see I have numbers 283 through 284. That's just a short import. Obviously, your import would show larger numbers. So you could then, select these. Let's say if I said 283 through 284, you could come into your land deals, search by that property ID range, 3 through 284. Okay. Now, if those even exist, let's just say, because I'm only seeing up to 282, so those records may be already out of there. So I'll just go 269 through 282. I know those exist. So you search, you come back, you find these records. Obviously, you hit select all. Now, this is a small subset I'm just using to show this example. So then you'd come in here and simply delete these records that are selected in your import. So that's going to delete all of your previous imported records. So once you delete, you'll always have to say confirm delete, and there'll be hundreds of records that will be out of there. Then you can go back in, you clear your search, and you can go back in and import that same file again. You choose it and upload list, and those same errored records, the same 100 records that had an error before, will show up as error again, and then you can do a screen print, to save that page, and you get an idea of the records that you can fix. Okay, and then so that brings us into the second question, which has about correcting any errored records. So we've had that question many times. So if I've imported a list, let me find one here that actually I know has errors. Let's see. If I can't find one, I'll just make one up. I think this one is showing with errors, and I think I might have fixed the errors. So I'll just take out one with a individual with a no last name and an individual with no first name. Make sure that I make a little change to the APN. All right, and we'll just, okay, so, and let's make sure we save this. Okay, so these have some errors in them. So basically, yes, okay, thank you. Okay, I choose this file. I'm going to bring it in. Okay, two records not imported, obviously records 9 and 10, empty last name, empty first name. So records were obviously bad. Now, what do I do with them? I call them back up again and I say I want to fix these records. So I'm going to put in the last name and I'm going to put in a first name. And I'm going to make sure my file gets saved again. Please don't forget to do that. Okay. Okay. So now when we get back into our land deals, if you want to correct records and you want to re-import that same file, however, on the re-import, you really only want to deal with any changes. As you can see, what I'm going to do, I'm going to come down here, I'm going to choose file again. I'm going to choose that same errored file. Now, instead of having it create new records, I'm going to select this update existing records. I want you to be able to read that. Selecting the update existing records option, if the system finds a matching record, property record that is already in the system based on the APN, property state, and property county fields, it will update the owner's contact information for that record as well as append any new property information included in your import. So if you remember, I made a change to the APN. So basically, I'm now going to update using the existing records so that I can see upload list. Now you see I had two rows that got imported and ventured, they should be those rows that I fixed, only those rows that I fixed. And here we are, Hector and Karina's Hendricks. Remember that I changed those names on those particular records. That was records number 9 and record number 10. So that's how you correct errors and re-import. Some of our students are trying this, but what they're forgetting to do is change to the update existing records, and they come in and they re-import again, and still they don't see their changes reflected. So and so that's what needs to be done in order to correct. So now I see a question around this. Okay, well, what do we do to get that corrected info? Okay. To get the corrected info. That is a case-by-case basis, Don, because it depends on exactly what the errors that you have. Now, obviously, mine was missing a last name and one was missing a first name. Now, sometimes when that happens, obviously, you know the county that record was in. So it could have been, when they gave you your county list, we as our company, we go directly to a county and we get the list from the county. Some of you that may go to Agent Pro 247, or you may go to, in some other listing service, you may not have that issue where you're missing actual, data in the records. But what we have to do is we'll take the APN number. In this particular case, I would probably take this APN and I would go back into the county records and I would see for this APN, what is this, individual's first and last name? Perhaps something just as the data was coming out was left off. It's just mistakes happen. So data gets dropped for whatever reason. So I could have a lot of records. I find a lot of times I have records that have an address, but they're actually missing a city. And Investment Dominator might kick that out as an error. So I would have to take each APN, go back into the county record, and fill in the missing information. And so that could be an exercise you go through, but what I'm saying is it's a case by case basis, and there's not really just a straightforward way to always get the info. You have to look at what the error was and then proceed accordingly. Very good. Okay, people, great questions. Good. I'm glad you all are here. We got another large number of folks in the house, which is wonderful. That's great. So let's go on to our next question, which actually came about from the 12th, which was last week. And it had to do with the second owner on record with the county. Do we send a neutral letter or offer letter to the address you have from the county? Yes, and the answer to that, okay, if there is a second owner on record with the county, you send a neutral letter to his or her address. Well, if when you look at the county records, let me see, make sure this question came from Michael. There's really only one address associated with the county record for that APN, even though there may be a first and a second owner on record. So the question is, if you have a second owner with the county, do we want to send a letter to that individual? Well, that individual is sharing the same address as the primary person that's on the file. So when it comes to sending a neutral letter for second owners, we only send one letter. Now, this is the way we handle it. So we will only send one letter because there's basically only one address on the county record. And we don't worry about even listing the second owner on that particular letter. And we don't send out a separate letter with the second owner's name on it to that address either. Because whoever's on that, the primary, when they get that record, when they get that letter, they're the ones that are going to call. If there is a second owner, they will get involved. Get that second owner involved because both of them are going to have to okay doing anything with the property. Okay? So do you send a neutral letter to the second owner? No, we don't do that. So that would mean sending out, two different that would send out two different letters for the same exact parcel with the same address, and it's really not worth that. But it is your business, so if you feel led to do that, you can go ahead and do that. We don't normally do that as a practice. So yeah, I want to address this question that's again coming in from Don with regards to, because we already talked about the missing info, and Don is asking, is it worth it? Is it worth spending the time to fix the records? Well, in a situation like it was presented to us, Don, just my opinion, the person that asked the question, he had about 100 records that did not import. So if I had 100 records that didn't import, chances are I probably sent out, I might have sent out 500-600 records. Depending on what the errors were, I would probably take the time and go back and fix the records that were aired out. If it was something easy and straightforward, like names or address information or city, something that I could easily go back into groupings of them and find, okay, well, city's missing for all these records, or trying to think of other errors that come in, where address information is missing. Now, if it's address information missing, that may take a little bit more analysis, but my opinion would be for 100 records, yeah, probably out of 100 records, a pretty good chance I might get someone saying, I want an offer on my property. So I would take the time. Now, just so you know, one of my processes before I even bring records into the Investment Dominator where they end up in prospect status, I always look at my data that I'm importing. When I import a file, I'm only importing records that I'm going to process in Investment Dominator that time. I would not input several thousand records at one time. I know some of you students are doing that. That's not my practice. I would only enter the ones or bring the ones into Investment Dominator that I'm going to actually process. So I have a small enough subset. I mean, if I have to go through 500 records to make sure that I have all my first names, last names, that there are no addresses missing, I'll take the time and do that even before I choose that file and import it into Investment Dominator, and I'll make my fixes there. So that's just a part of my business practice, because I have noticed where, I've brought records in and I get, there are mistakes on them. So, okay, let's look at, we got a question from the 12th of September. It's last Thursday, regarding the previous custom document. This was from Neil. And I had a chance to look at it after the webinar. So regarding your previous custom doc with a second owner, do you generate and send multiple files and templates to letterprinting.net? No, I do not. I have one template with letter printing, and if it has to do with a second owner, I don't do that because there's still only one address on file with the county. So do we send multiple files? That would be a hassle to me. And templates to letter printing. No, that would be a mistake, because letterprinting.net is only going to choose one of your templates at a time. So if we come up here to land deals and we're looking at the generate documents and we're looking at the templates that we're going to send them, I'm going to open this template, and you see these are the fields that letterprinting.net is going to use. Now, could I add, let's say, I could call letterprinting.net and say, okay, what are your fields for second owner? And they would give me their field names for the second owner. Now, I could come into my template that I send them, and I could modify it to where I put another line here and I put second owner under here, just in case there is a second owner that comes across in the data. You're welcome to do that. We don't do that as a practice, and one of the main reasons we don't do that is because at this stage it's not really necessary. We're writing one of the owners that are on record as having this property, and we're saying, I'm very interested in purchasing this property from you, and if you're considering selling it, basically we'll buy it fast. Now, if they have a second owner that they have to consult with, because both owners must sign the agreement before you can do anything with that land, if there's two, owners on there. So I'm basically sharing with you, you can go ahead and you can modify your template if you want to incorporate a second owner. We normally don't do that, because it's only when it gets to the offer level do we even worry about the second owner. And then when it's the when it is a second owner involved, we make sure on the offer letter going out that we're addressing both the primary and the second owner that is on the contract, so that we know, let the customer know that both owners must sign. So I'm hoping that kind of clears up that particular portion. Okay. And we have some questions that are coming in here. Okay, so we're going to hit a question that we got from, again, Don on the 12th. Do you ever mail to companies? Okay, and I see I have a couple more questions coming in here around mailing to companies. Do I ever mail to companies? The only companies that we will mail to, we definitely do mail to companies. When Jack first started teaching this, and even when we first got into the business, which is a little over 2 years ago, we weren't mailing to companies. We were separating companies in our input. So if we had any companies, what I would take these two company records, I would put them actually on another page. I would start another worksheet, and all of our companies were on a separate page from all of our individuals. We were only doing individuals. Then I found out that from a couple of the coaches that they do mail to companies, but the kind of companies they mail to are like LLCs, and they mail to some trusts. So many LLCs and trusts, as you may be aware, are individuals. They're owned by individuals, and they're just categorized in the data as a company. So, and you can tell when you look at the owners, if it's an individual or if it's actually like a corporation. So if it's an LLC, a trust, yes, we mail to them. Do we mail to corporations? No, I pretty much don't mail to corporations. Churches, I have, but we haven't really gotten any deals from that. I mail to churches because I think, sometimes it's one person that might be getting paid from the church and owns that, or the church owns this parcel of land, but there's only one real individual controlling the interest of that parcel. So if it's not a lot of land, if it's a smaller parcel, anything like 10 acres or less, yeah, I'll mail to the church. Anything that says Inc. Incorporated, no, I don't usually mail to those. So I'm kind of hoping that gives you some clarity. Don't mail to corporations. I case by case basis on if it's a church, if it's something that says incorporated or CORP, that's corp. We don't normally mail to those at this time. But trusts, LLCs, yes. Hopefully that will help you. So we had a question, do you put LLC, trust, etc. in the company column? Yes, if I have a company name. So the answer to your question, Bill, is if I have a company name, if I know for sure it's an LLC, or if I know for sure it's a trust, which you can get that information out of the county record, I will go on and put the LLC, comma LLC or trust. And usually it comes in the name, by the way, that at least the records from the companies that I see, I will put that in. But I also, yeah, it's a good point. I put it in before I'm importing this into Investment Dominator, so that Investment Dominator sees the company and it just puts that name of the company right into the record. And as you can see, because it's categorized as a company, that's the way it's going to process. So, okay. Let's see. Um, I tell you, I hope everyone's had a good Monday. It's been a really busy one for me, but it's been a good Monday. We just had quite a few calls that we were on today, and this is my last call for the day, and one of the greatest calls I get to make is with you guys here on the webinar. So all is well. Let me make sure I'm not getting past any crucial questions here. Okay. Y'all are so nice. I appreciate your nice comments. Thank you so much. Um, okay. Hmm. So someone has a very interesting question here. I'm not really sure. Trying to think if I know how to answer this one question. I kind of like you guys come up with some great questions. Okay, I think I'm going to see. The question is basically if you wanted to search for um, APNs, let's say all beginning with the number 4. Okay? Beginning with the number 4. I'm going to take a stab at this. I'm thinking, let's see. If we have company, okay, we have APN equal to contains. So we don't have a beginning with, but we do have a contains. But it's just this contains. If I say contains, 4, that's not really beginning with 4. That's, if there's 4 anywhere in the APN, um, doesn't contain, is empty, non-empty. So I don't know that there's a way, but I'm tell you what, that's a challenge there. I want to research that one. Um, I'm going to research this one and see if there's a way, or if we can have our technical team update this particular function where we have a begins with, and you can even put in like, begins with 4 2 or begins with 4 2 5. Um, that would be a pretty cool search. I can't think of a way to do it right now. Specific group of APNs. But if you did, you'd have to have something like this, and then of course, you do your search, and voila. I mean, you're going to come back with any APN that has 4 in there, um, but not beginning with 4, just that contain a 4. So the answer is right now we can't do that. Um, if you had, hmm, okay, that's a real stumper. See, I've been batting 1,000 on my questions today, and that one I'm going to have to go back to the think tank, get some help from the heavy hitters. So, uh, like, interesting. let me see. Okay, APN. Yeah, we're just going to have another, not equal, equal, not equal, contains, doesn't contain. It's empty. We're going to have another designation here to say begins with. I think that's the simplest way, and programmatically, that's something that I think our technical team can do, and you'll just be able to put in, but it will always have to be in the beginning, 4, 5, 2, and then it's only going to search for any APNs that begin with 452, and I think we'll have it there. So I'm going to put this down as a suggestion. Okay, so though I put this down as a suggestion, I can tell you honestly, people, that it's going to be based on, when our technical group looks at, okay, in our business, how many times do you really want to search for APNs only beginning with certain numbers? Is that something we would do in a business sense? Is it something we would do in our business on a regular basis? So all I'm saying is, even though I put this down as a suggestion, they might look at it and say, no, that's, it doesn't qualify as something we do often enough to actually make a change to Investment Dominator for that. So I just wanted to go on record, and this is being recorded, that Warren did not say or did not promise this was going to be implemented. All right. I don't want to get fired here. So thank you, people. That's good. I'm glad to have situations like this that we get to come up with, because this is what helps Investment Dominator become a better tool. And that's what we're after. So going on with another question, which was, oh wow, yeah, this is one I definitely wanted to get to today. We had a very good question. They're all very good questions. Come in from Pauline. And she said, she just talked with a county, and I want you all to just try to pay close attention to this, because I had to follow this one through, that doesn't allow commercial solicitations. Okay. So she talked to a county, and they say, okay, we don't allow you to do any commercial solicitation in our county. So the question was asked, how do we get around that? And one of our coaches had done some research on this, thankfully, and you don't really need to get around it at all, because when a county is saying that you can't solicit, they're looking at it like you're asking the customer to pay you for a service. And that's not what we're doing. Initially, when we want to get our county list, so again, when the county says that to you, they're saying it's like you're asking the customer to pay you for some service. That's solicitation. Since we're offering to pay the customer for purchasing their land, this is acceptable with the county. So I'm hoping that's clear, that you can see the distinction. We're offering to pay the customer for purchasing their land. So therefore, this is acceptable with the counties. Our actions are not going to be, at this point, considered commercial solicitation. So if you come in contact with that, people, and you want to go at that county, or you want to get a list from that county, I would say feel free. Don't feel like you're violating any of their rules or regulations, okay? So I'm hoping that's clear. I had to wrap my mind around that a couple times. So okay, very good. Yep, we got lots of comments on the on the when we're trying to search for that APN starting with 4. So that was a good one to bring up, and we got a lot of good ideas about that I see coming in. Let's go on to the next question that was around skip tracing. Okay. Okay, skip tracing. Want everybody to know what skip tracing is. Basically, you see we have some here, and I think I explained it on the last call. Basically, these records have gone out. They were prospect records. They went out, and when they came back, the address information was not correct, so it came back returned to sender, basically. And so what we did, we went in for these records that came back, and we changed the status to skip trace. Okay, that's a viable status. If we selected any records, let me do prospects. So if we selected any of these records here, we can go into change status, and there's skip trace right there. So we can change any records to that status. Then we can actually search. We find these records. So, okay, this particular individual was looking at, okay, how it works. This particular individual was looking at, okay, we're looking at 2 records here, skip trace, but this particular individual was looking at maybe 60 or 70 records that are going to be skip traced. So this is a much larger volume of records that they're skip tracing. So what they want the ability to do is use Investment Dominator to pull all of their skip trace records out, put them in a CSV file, a .csv file, an Excel file. They want the ability then to send that off to their VA, all these records that need to be skip traced, have their VA find the correct addresses, and then send them back a file where they can import these records back into Investment Dominator, and they of course will go back into prospect status. So that would be the process. So these are records that they couldn't find the addresses. So I'm going to carry you just through the process of if you want to do skip tracing, basically by I'll tell you, we've got some good comments here coming in. If you want to do skip tracing and kind of do it in a batch form, so you have a whole bunch. So I'm only going to use 2 records here. So one of the first things I'm going to do is I'm going to set the records that I want in skip trace status, as you see here. So then I'm going to select all the records that are in skip trace status. If I need to go in and search, a large, I'm going to obviously do status. If I want to select a lot of them, status, skip trace, and I'll search for those records, and it'll bring me back any records that I have in skip trace status. But unfortunately, there's not a way to you have to go through and put the different records that come back return to sender. You have to go back and put them in this status one at a time. But here, then you can do a search. You select all your skip trace records, and then you can export them. First, you do a select all. All right, then you export them to a .csv file. So when you open that file, it's going to look like this. It'll be those 2 records that were skip traced. And you can see there are a lot of fields that you get in your export. you're basically after changing, this mailing address primarily. So you're after the mailing address, the city, make sure the state is, correct. So this file you could save as some file and you could send to your VA and ask them to look up the records, look up the correct address for, Vernon and Juan and for these records, all the records in the skip trace file. That's what you would do first. Now, once you have this file exported, you want to come back in here, and this is very important that you delete these skip traced records, because when you re-import these records after your VA has fixed them, when you re-import them, if these are not deleted, you're going to put in another Vernon S. Torino and you'll put in another Juan Mendoza, and you'll have the duplicate records. So at this point, I want to delete these two records. In your case, it could be, 60, 70 records. Confirm delete. Okay, so those records are now no longer in the system. So I'm going to send my .csv file now, exported, to the VA. They're going to look up the records. Now, what they're going to have to do, they're going to put the records back in a formatted record, okay? So that formatted file, so that Investment Dominator now you can re-import those records into Investment Dominator. And these are our two records. And let's say we made the change to the address and it just shows REP, because I'm just wanting you to see it's a different record here. So at this point, we're ready to import this file back into Investment Dominator. And by the way, I just want to call your attention to the two fields that you'll have to add back if they were previously in your records is property size and market value. These are fields that are in Investment Dominator. So you will add these fields back, or your VA will add these fields back, and this is the file you will import now back into the Investment Dominator. This is only talking about two records, but obviously you could have you could be looking at 70, 100 records, whatever you're trying to skip trace. Come back into land deals and import. Going to choose that file, and we're losing the one with the skip trace. We upload that list. Okay, and it imports our records back into Investment Dominator, prospect status, and then when we edit that record, if I look at the address, you see it has my REP. So this updated the mailing address for that particular record. And that's basically the process that you'd have to go through in order to do it in a batch form, where you have lots of records and where you can send it out to a VA and have them fix those addresses for you. So do we have a question here, or do we have a comment regarding that? So you can manage them in Investment Dominator in skip trace status, and eventually get the addresses and then turn them into prospects. Yes, that's exactly what we just did. So originally we didn't have the correct address for Juan and for Vernon. We exported the files when they were skip trace status. We sent them now to our VA. Our VA modified, they found the correct addresses, and now they're sending them back. Yeah, Bill, yeah, just REP. That's just my way. I wanted something on the it's like repeat. I just wanted something in the address that would show that these were the records that got re-imported into Investment Dominator successfully, so that we could tell, because obviously REP wasn't on the original records that we skip traced. So that was just my way of saying repeat. Okay. Hope that didn't cause any more confusion. Let's see. So if there are any questions around this, I'll be happy to answer them. With regards to skip tracing, we have found that we have a VA that takes care of all of our skip tracing, because there's so many records. I mean, doing 400 or 500 records a week, we get a large percentage, and I'm not gonna say too large of a percentage, but there are more records that come back with return to sender than we want to deal with at any one time. So we have a VA that will be that's happy to sit there and just go through and crank out changing the addresses. Um, I'm trying to think of. It's been such a long time since I looked at skip tracing. Um, I'm trying to think of the site that she goes to, but in any case, she finds a site, goes and gets the right address, and I think it's Spokio is what she goes after, and finds the addresses, and then she gets them back to us, and she has a login into our Investment Dominator. So she comes in, finds those records, and basically puts them in or modifies them, and puts them back in prospect status. And then when I go process the records for that week, I'm sending them out newly, and they're getting to the right people. So it's worth it to us to pay her, and for doing that. And we average right about maybe 75 cents, 80 cents per record that she does, something like that. And she makes some money on those records, and she's happy doing that, just sitting at home. So that's how we handle it. Hope that gives you a little clarity on how you might be able to deal with skip traced records. Um, let me see here if I missed any questions. How do we get the missing info? Let's see. Let's see. Simple Thanks has the same problem. It would not import any lead first name. Okay. Okay, we have an interesting question here on sites, which might have time enough to answer this. So we have a buying and selling site. Okay, and the question appears to be, so we have buying and selling sites for both land and homes, but are we able to add an additional site if we wanted to separate land and houses to have their own dedicated sites? I think that came from Kathy. And the answer to that, based on what I see in the Investment Dominator, is no. So you have a buying and selling site for both land and homes. In the Investment Dominator, we are handling, obviously, two sites right now. Your buying site and your selling site. So it appears that Kathy wants to be able to add another site in addition to these buying and selling sites, perhaps for, I don't know, for homes. And at this time, I don't know if I don't know that that can be done. In fact, I know it can't be done right now the way Investment Dominator is set up, because obviously you get domains for your buying site and you have a domain for your selling site, and these are the only ones that are configured in the Investment Dominator. So what we would have to do is we would have to make this what we call dynamic. We'd have to have the ability to add sites dynamically. So you would go into some screen and you would put in the parameters for your site, make it around home or office, and you'd say add site. And so when you displayed it now, you would have more than just website settings for buying and website settings for selling. You'd have website settings for these other additional sites. We have to give Investment Dominator the ability to be dynamic in its creation of sites. And right now, we don't have that functionality in place, nor is there any plans, at least to my knowledge. I will ask about that. Dynamically being able to create sites. We don't have that at this time. Okay, people, really good questions. Thank you all for all of your participation. Again, please don't hesitate to send those questions in. I'm going to go back through all of these, make sure I didn't miss any. I think I got all of them for today. If there are any that you need us to handle, before the next couple of days, remember next week we'll be out on a week from Thursday, which will be the 26th of September. 26th of September will be the 2-day workshop, and I will be there, one of the presenters for that workshop. So I definitely won't be doing a webinar, but we'll have one this Thursday, and of course one on next Monday, the 23rd, and then we'll be missing the one on the 26th. So with that, I wanted to leave you all with a thought, and I wanted to be able to get to that thought. Say this has been quite a day. It's been a good day. But from E.E. Cummings, E.E. Cummings says it takes courage to grow up and become who you really are. So I want you all to continue to be courageous and continue to send out those letters, get those offer requests out, and continue to stay consistent in your business, and you will be successful. You are all very welcome. It's a pleasure being able to serve with you all and to be on these calls. Keeps me sharp on Investment Dominator. So thank you for asking all of your great questions. Thank you, Don. I'm glad you feel like that. Calls are valuable to me as well. So keep sending in the questions, and we will look forward to talking with you at 12 noon Pacific time on Thursday. Everybody have a great week. Talk to you later. Bye-bye. Wow.